The estate lawyer's office had the kind of aggressive air conditioning that made you forget Phoenix was burning outside. I sat across from Richard Thornton, Esquire, watching his face cycle through several expressions as he reviewed the documents in front of him. "I'm sorry, Miss Walker," he finally said, setting down his reading glasses. "But this is completely legal. Your father transferred the trust fund to his wife's name 3 months ago. The paperwork is ironclad." "His wife?" I laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. "You mean the woman who's currently divorcing him?" Thornton's eyebrows shot up. "Divorcing?" Mr. Walker made no mention. "Because he doesn't know." I pulled out my phone, showing him the screenshot my friend at the courthouse had sent me. "Cassandra filed 3 months ago. Same week he transferred my trust fund to her name. Funny coincidence, right?" The lawyer went pale as he studied the filing date. This changes things considerably. "Does it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, my stepmother just played my father like a Vegas slot machine and hit the jackpot." "My jackpot?" "The trust fund my grandmother left specifically for me." "The transfer was legal," he said weakly. "Your father had full discretionary power as trustee until your 30th birthday. Which is next month." I stood, gathering my purse. Convenient timing. "Tell me, Mr. Thornton, does attorney-client privilege extend to warning someone they're about to be cleaned out by a con artist in designer heels?" That would be a conflict of interest." "Of course it would." I headed for the door. "Thanks for nothing." Outside, the September heat slammed into me like a physical force. I sat in my car, cranking the AC and staring at my phone. 37 missed calls from my father. I'd been ignoring them since this morning when I'd called to confirm lunch plans, and Cassandra had answered with, "Oh, Lauren dear. Your father's in the shower. By the way, we won't be able to make lunch. Estate planning meetings all day. You understand." Estate planning. The irony burned worse than the Arizona sun. I finally listened to his voicemails. "Lauren, honey, call me back. There's something I need to discuss with you about your trust fund." "Lauren, it's important." "It's actually good news. Cassandra had an excellent idea about tax shelters." "Sweetheart, I know you're probably busy with work, but this is time sensitive. The last one left an hour ago. Lauren Michelle Walker, this is ridiculous. I'm your father. Pick up the phone." I called him back. Finally. He answered on the first ring. "Where have you been?" "Working. You know, that thing people do when they don't have trust funds to fall back on." "Don't be dramatic. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I've made some changes to better protect your assets." "By giving them to Cassandra?" Silence. "Then, how did you never mind?" "Yes, I transferred the trust to her name. It's a smart tax move, Lauren. She has certain deductions I don't, Anne." "Dad, when's the last time you talked to your lawyer?" "Your actual lawyer, not Cassandra's." "What? Why would I?" "Cassandra handles all that. She has an MBA from Wharton, you know." "She has an online certificate from Wharton. Big difference. And she's been handling more than your finances." "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a deep breath. "It means your wife filed for divorce 3 months ago. Right before you transferred my $750,000 trust fund into her name." The silence stretched so long I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "That's impossible," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We just renewed our vows in Cabo. She's planning our anniversary party. She's planning her exit strategy. Dad, go to the courthouse. Look up the records yourself. Case number DV 2023-0847. You're wrong. You've always been jealous of Cassandra." "Jealous?" I laughed. "Of a woman who married my 60-year-old father when she was 28? Who convinced him to cut me out of family dinners because I made her uncomfortable? Who spent 5 years systematically isolating him from everyone who might warn him what she really is?" "Dad, I'm not jealous. I'm furious. This is ridiculous. Cassandra loves me. Cassandra loves your money. And now she has it. All of it, apparently. I'm hanging up. When you're ready to apologize. Check the courthouse records, Dad. Then call me." He hung up. I drove to my apartment in Tempe, the one I shared with 2 roommates, because Phoenix rent was insane and I'd been counting on that trust fund to finally buy something of my own. Grandmother Walker had set it up specifically for me, her only grandchild. For Lauren's independence, the original documents had said. to be held in trust until her 30th birthday or upon completion of graduate school, whichever comes first. I'd finished my master's in education 2 years ago. Dad had convinced me to wait until 30 to claim it. Better tax situation, he'd said. Trust me. Trust. What a joke. My roommate Jess was in the kitchen when I got home. You look like someone died. What happened? My inheritance did. I grabbed her wine bottle, not bothering with a glass. Remember my stepmother? The one I said was probably a gold digger. The yoga instructor with the Hermes addiction? That's the one. Turns out I underestimated her. She's not just a gold digger. She's a full-scale mining operation. I explained the situation while Jess's eyes got progressively wider. Holy shit, she finally said. Can you sue? With what money? I'm a public school teacher. I make $43,000 a year. The trust fund was supposed to be my escape hatch. What about your dad? Currently in denial. But reality's about to hit him like a freight train. 2 hours later my phone rang. Lauren. His voice was hollow, defeated. I went to the courthouse. And she filed 3 months ago. Irreconcilable differences. And she's claiming Arizona is a community property state. My lawyer says since I transferred the trust to her name, it's now considered marital property. Which means she gets half of everything I own, plus the entire trust fund since it's already in her name. A broken laugh. I've been played. Where are you? Sitting in my car outside what used to be my house. She changed the locks while I was at the courthouse. There's a restraining order. Says I've been emotionally abusive. My own house, Lauren. I can't go into my own house. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. The part that remembered every Christmas Cassandra had convinced him I couldn't come to. Every birthday dinner she'd monopolized with her drama. Every family event she'd poisoned with her presence. But he was still my father. The man who'd raised me alone after Mom died. Who'd been smart and successful until a pretty face and fake MBA had turned him into a fool. Come to my apartment, I heard myself say. We'll figure this out. I can't impose. Dad, just come. He showed up an hour later looking like he'd aged a decade. His usually perfect silver hair was disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled. He stood in my doorway like he didn't know how to enter a space this small. Tea, I offered. Something stronger? I poured him whiskey from Jess's stash. He sat on our second-hand couch, looking around at my cramped living room with new eyes. This is where you live. This is what teachers can afford in Phoenix. The trust fund was supposed to change that. Down payment on a house. Maybe a car that doesn't break down monthly. Basic security. He flinched. Lauren, I'm so sorry. I thought I was being smart. Cassandra said. Stop. I held up a hand. I don't want to hear what Cassandra said. I want to know what happens now. My lawyer is filing an emergency injunction, but he's not optimistic. The transfer was legal. The fact that she filed for divorce first just makes it strategic. What about your assets? Frozen pending divorce proceedings. I can't access anything except my checking account, which has about $3,000. He laughed bitterly. I've been living off credit cards Cassandra doesn't know about. Staying at a Motel 6. Dad, you're worth millions. Was worth millions. Now I'm worth whatever half she doesn't get. My lawyer says best case scenario I keep the business and she gets everything else. Worst case. He trailed off. And my trust. Gone. Legally hers now. He met my eyes. I'll make it right, Lauren. Once this is over I'll rebuild. I'll pay you back every penny. With what? You'll be starting over at 65. Then that's what I'll do. I studied him. This man who'd once been so proud, so confident, so dismissive of my concerns about Cassandra. Why did you trust her so completely? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I was lonely. After your mother died, I threw myself into work. Into raising you. And then you grew up and I realized I'd forgotten how to be anything other than a father and a businessman. Cassandra made me feel young again. Desired. Like I was more than just a wallet. But that's all you were to her. I see that now. He rubbed his face. You tried to warn me. So many times. I called you jealous, petty, said you couldn't accept me moving on. But you saw what I refused to. She was good at it. I admitted. The yoga instructor thing, the spiritual wellness angle, the sob story about growing up poor. She played the character perfectly. Until she didn't need to anymore. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text from an unknown number. This came an hour ago. I read it. Robert, by now you know about the divorce. Don't make this harder than necessary. Sign the papers and I'll only take what I'm legally entitled to. Fight me and I'll bury you. See. Classy, I muttered. There's more. My lawyer did some digging. This isn't her first rodeo. She's done this twice before in California and Nevada. Different names, same MO. Marry older wealthy men, convince them to transfer assets, then divorce. So she's a professional. Apparently. And I was just her latest mark. We sat in silence, the weight of his catastrophic mistake filling my small living room. Can I ask you something? I finally said. Anything. Why didn't you just leave the trust alone? It was protected. Safe. Mine. His shoulders sagged. Because she convinced me you didn't deserve it. Said you were ungrateful, that you'd rejected our family, that you'd waste the money on. I don't even remember now. Something about your lifestyle. My lifestyle? I'm a teacher who drives a Honda Civic and shops at Target. I know. God, I know. But she had this way of twisting things. Making me doubt my own judgment. Except about her, apparently. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I had a sick feeling I knew who it was. Lauren dear. I heard you visited Richard Thornton today. I do hope you understand this is all just business. Nothing personal. Your father made his choices. Perhaps next time he'll think twice before marrying someone half his age. Consider it a life lesson. See. I showed it to my father. His face went red then white. She's taunting us, he said. She knows she's won. Has she? I pulled out my laptop. Dad, you said she's done this before. California and Nevada. Different names. That's what my lawyer found. But it doesn't help. What she did was legal. Legal maybe. But patterns matter. And if she's using different names. I started typing, pulling up databases from my friend who worked in background checks. What name did she use when you met? Cassandra Williams. Middle name. Marie. Why? I kept searching. Because people who run cons usually keep something consistent. Makes it easier to remember their lies. An hour later, I had 3 names. Cassandra Marie Williams, Arizona, Marie Cassidy Wilson, California, and Cassie Marie Wallace, Nevada. All with social security numbers that were 1 digit apart. Dad, I said slowly. I don't think your wife is who she says she is. What do you mean? I mean these social security numbers? They're what happens when someone buys identities in bulk from the same forger. They're sequential. And look at this. I pulled up a news article from 6 years ago. Marie Cassidy Wilson was investigated for identity theft in Sacramento. Case dropped for lack of evidence, but the detective quoted here? He says she was suspected of using at least 5 false identities. My father leaned forward. Are you saying? I'm saying Cassandra might have bigger problems than divorce court. If she's been using false identities to commit fraud across state lines. That's federal, he breathed. Wire fraud. Identity theft. RICO potentially. Exactly. I closed the laptop. Your lawyer needs to see this. Tonight. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. My father's lawyer contacted the FBI. Turns out, they'd been building a case against someone matching Cassandra's description for 2 years. The sequential social security numbers were the break they'd needed. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, federal agents raided the house Cassandra had locked my father out of. They found documents for 12 different identities, bank accounts in 4 countries, and evidence of a fraud ring that had bilked 17 men out of approximately $30 million over 8 years. Cassandra, whose real name was apparently Martha Kolsky from Detroit, was arrested at the Sky Harbor Airport trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. With my trust fund money in her carry-on, converted to cashier's checks. The trust fund, my father's lawyer explained, is evidence now. But since it was obtained through fraud, it'll be returned once the case is resolved. How long will that take? 6 months to a year. Maybe longer. I looked at my father who'd been staying on my couch for a week. He'd aged visibly, but something in his eyes had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something quieter. Humility maybe. I can wait, I said. I've made it this far without it. You shouldn't have to, he said quietly. None of this should have happened. I let my ego and my stupidity put your future at risk. Yeah, you did. He flinched but nodded. I've been thinking. The house in Scottsdale, it's mine free and clear. Cassandra never got her name on it. I'm going to sell it. Dad. Let me finish. I'm going to sell it and give you the proceeds. It won't be the full $750, but it'll be close. You can buy your house, get a decent car. Start the life you should have had years ago. And where will you live? He smiled ruefully. Maybe a studio apartment. I hear they build character. Don't be ridiculous. We'll figure something out. Well, you can't stay on my couch forever. Jess is starting to charge you rent in wine bottles. He laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in years. Fair enough. Besides, I added, someone needs to teach you how to spot con artists. Apparently you have a type. Apparently I do. He grew serious. Lauren, I need to say something. You tried to protect me. For years you saw what Cassandra was and tried to warn me. And I chose her over you. Every time. I chose a lie over my own daughter. You did. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. About missed Christmases and birthdays. About being excluded from my own family by a woman who was building a criminal empire on fake identities and real greed. About the trust fund that should have been my freedom, almost lost to a con artist's grand finale. I can try, I said finally. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean trusting you with financial decisions ever again. Fair. He held out his hand. Partners. In figuring this mess out. I shook it. Partners. But I handle the money. Deal. 6 months later we sat in a federal courthouse watching Martha Kolsky get sentenced to 15 years for wire fraud, identity theft and racketeering. The trust fund had been released back to me. All $750,000, plus interest accumulated during the freeze. My father had sold the Scottsdale house and downsized to a modest condo. He'd given me the difference, not as guilt money, but as what he called tuition for the most expensive lesson of my life. With the combined funds, I'd bought a house in Central Phoenix. Nothing fancy but mine. My father had a standing invitation for Sunday dinners which he never missed. You know what the irony is? He said one evening, helping me wash dishes in my kitchen. I spent 5 years defending Cassandra to you. Convinced you were jealous of my happiness. But you were never jealous. You were trying to protect me. Actually, I said, handing him a plate to dry, I was trying to protect my trust fund. Protecting you was just a bonus. He laughed. Fair enough. But yeah, I also didn't want to see you get hurt. Even when you were being an idiot. Especially when I was being an idiot. Especially then. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Outside, the Phoenix sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. My house. My kitchen. My life, finally secured by an inheritance that had taken a detour through federal evidence lockers but had found its way home. Hey Dad. I said as he prepared to leave. Next time you want to remarry? Maybe run her credit report first. Next time. He shook his head. There won't be a next time. I've learned my lesson. From now on, the only woman I'm trusting unconditionally is you. Good answer. But just to be safe, I'm putting you on a dating app blacklist. That's a thing. It is now. As I watched him drive away in his sensible Toyota, the Porsche had been sold to pay legal fees. I thought about karma and timing. How Cassandra, Martha, had played her con to perfection, right up until the moment her past caught up with her. How my father had lost everything except what mattered most. His relationship with me. How sometimes, losing $750,000 to a con artist is exactly what it takes to find out who really has your back. The trust fund had been meant to secure my independence. In a roundabout way, that's exactly what it did. Just with a few more federal agents and fraud charges than Grandmother Walker probably anticipated. But then again, she always said the best lessons were the expensive ones. She just probably didn't mean this expensive.